What we really want is to provide our farmers with economic stability through the trillion-dollar industries, which are oilseed and fiber.
That's Joy Beckerman from Hemp Ace International. This is the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. My name is Eric Herlock, and on today's show, I'll be talking to Joy about the hemp industry, which she's been a part of for over 30 years as a business owner, as a hemp advocate, as just somebody instrumental in the space. We'll talk about her work and where the industry stands today and where we're headed. We're also going to check in with Morris Beagle about the Noco Hemp Expo that's happening in Colorado next month. We'll have a few nuggets of hemp news, and today's the day that I'm announcing the winner of the Grado Hemp headphone giveaway. But first, a little something from our sponsor, IND Hemp. Ken Elliott from IND Hemp. How are you doing?
Eric, I'm fantastic, man. It's winter out here in the plains of Montana, and I'm actually in Nebraska right now.
Okay.
Went to the Iowa Ag Show a couple weeks ago, and I got a Ag Show in Nebraska next week. So, in the Midwest.
Yeah, keeping busy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I wanted to thank you for your sponsorship of our show. It's a great honor to sort of be, chosen of all the different sort of media options you have out there in the hemp space that you guys want to get behind what we're doing here at Lancaster Farming. So my sincere gratitude to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, we've been listening to a lot of podcasts, and you speak directly to the people that we work with, the farmers, the rural communities, the people who want to get into hemp. And we like the way you do it. We enjoy it. We appreciate the opportunity to jump on here. I listen to your podcasts all the time whenever we can. And you've got some great guests, and we want to encourage. I listen to people like Josh Leidecker and Ron Kander and people like that out there. It's like, man, I wish they were out here. And I've reached out to those guys in the past, and I'm hopeful we can do some work with them as well. And then we deal with some people in, it's Harmony Equine, Dr. Joyce Harmon. She's out in Virginia. So there's people out there doing some pretty cool things already with them on the East Coast. And I think it's cool. It's great. And we're trying to be a part of that.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm on a mission to talk to everybody.
Yeah, well, Joyce is a great gal. Yeah, I know Ron and Josh you've talked to. I know, like Chad Rosen with Victory Hemp. I heard you spoke with his nutritionist, his food safety guy, Ben, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, Ben Raymond. Yep. Great source of knowledge there.
Yeah, you were talking to Courtney Moran on the legal end of things, and I'm glad you guys reach out to her as a resource, because she is a gal that knows what's going on and got a heart for all this stuff. So you got some cool things going, and we want to be a part of that.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I love talking to smart people and letting them, fill me in on what I need to know. So
that's right. Great people.
Yeah, a lot of good people in this industry. I keep saying that cannabis loves community, and it's true. Like, there's this great big, just massive amount of people who are working hard to get this industry up and sustainable, and it's going to save the world. It's where the farmers are going to have to save the world. So I appreciate what you're doing out there, Ken. Yeah,
well, we appreciate what you're doing out there, and love the Lancaster area, and just love being a part of what you guys are doing.
That's Ken Elliott, president of IND Hemp in Fort Benton, Montana, and now a proud sponsor of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. Okay, so just a couple of nuggets of hemp news today. This first one comes from hempgrower.com, written by Eric Sandy. Headline reads, Humboldt County, California bans industrial hemp production. The story says, after continually kicking a temporary moratorium down the road for the past few years, the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors decided last week to permanently ban industrial hemp cultivation. It's a policy move notable mostly for the backdrop of cannabis cultivation in the county, part of California's Emerald Triangle and a legendary source for THC-rich crops and back-to-the-land cultural dynamics. All right, and this next story is quite a juxtaposition from the last story. This one comes from the Indy Star out of Indianapolis. The headline reads, legalizing hemp flower could net big money, but police say upholding laws would be impossible. It's written by London Gibson from the Indianapolis Star. The story says that legalizing hemp flower could open the door to a new market for Hoosier farmers and bring millions of dollars in revenue to Indiana. but prosecutors and police are worried doing so would take away one of their crucial tools for enforcing the state's marijuana laws. So if hemp flower were legalized in Indiana, police say it would make it impossible for law enforcement officers to tell if the substance is legal or illegal, creating issues when it comes to plausible suspicion for drug arrests. That's interesting, but here, this is me editorializing. Are they really concerned about the drug arrests, or are they concerned about the revenue that drug arrests bring in to their municipalities? Food for thought. I'll have links to those stories and more on the show page for this episode at lancasterfarming.com. All right, so a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned that I was going to give away a pair of hemp headphones made by Grado Labs in Brooklyn, New York. Well, today is the day. I have chosen out of well over 100 entries on the Instagram page. Thank you all for participating. I have chosen FO Hemp _OH. Okay, and that looks like it's Focus Organics Hemp in Ohio. They left a comment here. It says, Eric, I began my journey into your show with the intent to gain an understanding of the legality of hemp. Now, as a successful first-year grower, I reflect on truly how many decisions I weighed so heavily based on the content of your interviews. Thank you for such an amazing tool, and even better, a welcoming community space. My favorite show is from April of 2020. Mr. Ullman tuned us into the mystical realm of terpenes where his passion pours pictures. Yeah, thanks for saying that. That was a great show. Joe Ullman is an amazing source of information. And yeah, I appreciate you listening to our show, and I'm glad that we've been able to help you in a positive way. And also, thank you for mentioning the community, because this is a community. I know all of you just listen by yourselves in headphones or whatever, but altogether, we make up a pretty substantial group of hemp farmers and processors and hemp enthusiasts. So yes, we are a community. Thank you for putting that out. And also FO Hemp _OH, check your direct messages and your email, because I was trying to get in touch with you. So I want to get these headphones to you, and thank you for your loyal listenership. I would like to add that I'm going to do another giveaway next week. So this is a little bit of a tease. It's not headphones, it's something different, but equally awesome. And this time it comes from Canvassed Supply Company in Nashville, Tennessee. So you'll have to tune in next week to find out what we're giving away then. Okay, thanks once again to everyone who joined in on the contest. That was a lot of fun. And FO Hemp _OH, I hope you like these headphones. They're awesome. All right, so next up we're going to talk about the Noco Hemp Expo taking place in Colorado. Here we go. Hey, Morris Beagle. Welcome back to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Eric. Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been hearing a lot of buzz about the 7th annual Noco Hemp Expo in Colorado. It's coming up in March. So I thought we'd go right to the man responsible for it and find out what's going on. You know, what's going on?
Well, since we've been promoting the 7th annual Noco Hemp Expo for like 2 years now, and we didn't get to have it in 2020, we are having it in person in 2021 at the end of March.
Awesome.
So March 25th through the 27th, the 25th, we've got an investor forum at the Renaissance Hotel. The 26th and 27th, we're at the National Western Complex in Denver, which is home to the National Western Stock Show, which is an event that's been around in Colorado for over 100 years. So we're excited to be there. It's very farm and ag. We've got over 300,000 square feet to spread out all of our booths to be COVID compliant. We're working directly with the CDPHE, which is the Colorado Department of Health and Environment, as well as the Denver Health Department, to make sure that we've got, again, COVID compliant protocols in place. Mm-hmm. There's going to be capacity limits based on the level that we're at, which Colorado is trending in the right direction. We just moved from orange to yellow, allows more capacity, 50% at bars and restaurants. So we've done a pretty good job maintaining the pandemic situation here in Colorado. Governor Polis has done a really good job with that. And Governor Polis is actually going to be speaking at Noco, and he spoke at Noco not only as governor but as congressman like 5 of the first 6 years. So we're excited to have his support for the event as well.
Yeah, I bet. It's great when the political leaders get behind the industry. How about new and exciting things? What can attendees expect this year?
Well, we've got a mushroom pavilion. We're focusing some energy on the mycelium side of things with mushrooms, and not really that much from a psychedelic standpoint. It's really more about superfoods and industrial applications of mushrooms. Okay. We've got 4 stages. We have a main stage for the business conference and the farm symposium. We've also got a Silver Mountain speakeasy stage that goes with that, where we're going to have new Silver Mountain hemp guitars and combo amps and amplifiers that will decorate that stage. We've also got a materials zone stage where we'll be talking fiber for the most part and materials made from fiber. And we've got a general education stage, plus 250 to 300 exhibitors. So we're excited that we're going to be able to put on an event of this size at this point in time, coming out of the pandemic. But again, it's time to get back to business. You can walk across malls across the country, or across, at least in Colorado, and any given weekend there will be thousands of people that go through there, and everybody's keeping their distance. They're wearing masks, but they're going about their business. So I'm excited that we're able to do that at this point in time now.
Yeah, I think everybody's itching to just get back out there and be around people again. So that's cool. You've got some news about the Southern Hemp Expo too, right? Can you tell us about that?
Yep. So we just signed a contract with the Raleigh Convention Center and the city of Raleigh. And we were supposed to be back in Nashville on August 20th and 21st. And this just came about because we had some venue issues, contract issues, being able to get things signed before the end of April. There was just venue contract COVID situation in the Nashville area that made us have to look outside of the area to see if there were any other options. And Raleigh came back to us and said, hey, we'd love to have your event here. And we're moving the dates to September 2nd through the 4th. So it's going into Labor Day weekend. We are moving it back a little bit. But it should be at the tail end of the pandemic. There should be vaccines out there for everybody that wants to take them. And people will really want to be coming back to events at that time. And we're going to have more space than we've ever had for any event that we've ever produced. And Raleigh is providing us a city grant to come to Raleigh and use towards the venue. And it's never been given to a cannabis company before until us. So we're excited about the support. They're excited to really grow the hemp industry in the Raleigh community and support the industry for the state of North Carolina and the South. So we're excited to move there. We love Nashville. Nashville's a great place. Tennessee's a great place. It's just one of those situations where, hey, this opportunity popped up. We were having this problem. The pandemic has created all kinds of problems, but it's also created lots of opportunities. And we as entrepreneurs need to look at those opportunities. We as an industry need to look at those opportunities and really take advantage of them when we can, because there's challenges ahead of us. And again, it's a matter of taking a look at those opportunities that lie ahead of us and using those for the betterment of the industry.
Yeah, right on. Cool. Yeah, well, North Carolina has a lot to offer, so that's great news. Good stuff. What else is going on? Is there anything else you want to share with our listening audience? We're
doing some new Silver Mountain hemp guitars. We got the new Hempcaster V2 and a new combo amp, a 1x12 20 watt. So nice. I think you'll like both of them, you being a guitar player. The 35 watt and the 20 watt, and then the V1 and the V2.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, well, we were looking to debut this stuff at Noco in 2020, and now we've kind of refined things and made little tweaks and adjustments, and I think we're ready to go to market with our Silver Mountain custom shop for guitars and combo amps and amplifiers.
Cool, man. Looking forward to it. All right, well, hey, Morris, thanks a lot for checking in with us today. It looks like you got a lot of good stuff on the horizon.
Yep. Hey, and thanks, Eric, for all you do, and say hi to Joy for me.
Yeah, so of course Morris and our next guest, Joy Beckerman, know each other. They were actually just on Morris's podcast together. So, yeah, it's a small world after all. Joy Beckerman, welcome to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful, and it's such a great pleasure to be here with you today, Eric.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. Can you sort of give us an introduction? I mean, I know that you're well known in the cannabis space. You've been advocating for the plant for many years, but I think maybe some of our listeners are new to farming and also new to hemp farming, so maybe they don't know about the work you're doing. So can you just sort of tell us your backstory?
Absolutely. Thank you. I was quite impacted by the story of this plant at the young age of 20. I'll date myself here. That was back in 1990. So I've been involved in the movement and, in fact, the industries for nearly 30 years because I ended up opening up the first hemp store in the state of New York in the early 90s. And then when the inaugural hemp bill passed in Vermont in 1996, I was appointed to serve as secretary of the Vermont Hemp Council, so relocated my then young sons there to Burlington, Vermont, and then stayed in that position until they got a little older. They're 26 and 28 now, making their way through master's programs, and we relocated the family at that point to Seattle so that I could begin a dual career in compliance and complex civil litigation, which has, of course, served the advocacy efforts so well as we make our way through data and science-driven law and policy coming out of these decades of prohibition. And then I formed Hemp Ace International, which is my own legal consulting and expert witness firm in Seattle in 2014. I also sit on the board of directors for the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, which is an advocacy organization, a 501c4 working for hemp nationally. Have had many leadership positions in the nonprofit space in hemp over the years. And that is really where my happy place is, because advocacy is really where my heart is. In the end, I'm a grassroots activist. And so to be able to work with an organization that has a team of lawyers and funding to sort of move my aggressive agenda forward is wonderful for me. I also am co-founder and senior advisor to Colorado Hemp Works, which is our nation's first post-prohibition hemp grain processing facility based in Longmont, Colorado. I'm director of regulatory and legal affairs for Zalise, which is an international hemp extract and dietary supplement cosmetic company. And I also have a podcast, the Hemp Barons podcast, and many other things, but that's the list for now, Eric.
All right. You sound very busy, so thanks for taking some time with me today.
Of course. My pleasure. Thank you for getting the good word out and for everything that Lancaster Farming does.
It's a good organization, and I'm really proud to be working with Lancaster Farming.
Yes.
So you mentioned briefly that you first discovered this hemp plant in, 1990? Can you get into more of that? Like how did you discover the benefits of this plant?
Yes, well, I was at a Grateful Dead show in the spring of 1990 in Foxborough, Massachusetts. And as you may know, there's a book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes, which is in its severalth edition now and has been translated in multiple language across the country, across the planet. But that book was really the very first edition came out in a newspaper format in 1985 and then in 1998 in a book format. And I was handed a flyer with excerpts from this book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes, by Jack Herer, edited by Chris Conrad. Jack Herer, may he rest in peace. Chris Conrad's still a prolific activist for cannabis in all of its forms. And that, between really my sense of justice that I was raised with, I was raised by an attorney, my father who raised me by himself, and he was also a conservationist. And really a sense of social justice and environmental justice, where I did not understand at the age of 20. I figured we were going to kill ourselves and the planet and each other, but that we should do so in the context of peace, love, and music as we sort of ruined everything around us. And when I got this flyer, I'm a skeptical gal. I do not believe everything I read, but it affected me, Eric, really on a cellular level. It altered the trajectory of my life. It seemed to me, what I was reading was, wait a second, there's a pathway out of this crisis, this environmental crisis that we're in. And it looks like this plant, hemp, has had a tremendous impact on our history and our ability to get us as far as we've gotten, in fact. And not only is there a pathway forward, but this pathway has been criminalized. And it was just a harmonic convergence, for lack of a better phrase, of all of these different senses of justice coming together. And it affected me deeply. And as we can see today, 30 years later, it is where all of my focus is, particularly now that my sons are adults.
That's great. Yeah, those dead shows in the early 90s, I went to a couple of those myself.
Yes, indeed. And really, it was such a great way, the traveling, circus of it all. But, between 20,000 and 100,000 people of sold out shows and the many tens of thousands who never even got into the show, it was such a fantastic way to distribute information, right? And so much of the cannabis movement in all of its forms came through that platform, that traveling platform. This was, we didn't have the internet so much back in 1990.
Yeah. And that book, I remember when I first came in contact with it, I had dropped out of college, was living in a house in Boulder, Colorado, and somebody, left it on our front porch. And yeah, I mean, it definitely planted the seeds for this podcast and work that I'm doing now. And it's always sort of been in there. And then in 2017, I was at the Rodale Institute in Pennsylvania, and they had one of the first test plots, under the Pennsylvania hemp program, the research permit. I think it was like one of 16 hemp plots in the state that year. And I just find myself standing next to 4 acres of just, giant hemp plants. And it's like, I never thought I would see this. And it just got the gears turning. And that's when I realized, farmers need to know how to grow this. And so that's sort of started me on my journey.
Amen. And while it's not rocket science, of course, there are some complexities with hemp, and there's a steep learning curve. So, boy, are we lucky that the book got into you and that you have been bitten by the hemp bug. You are wanted and needed.
Well, there's still a lot of work to do. So here it is. It's 2021. Hemp is legal as a commodity crop. Adult use cannabis is legal in some form or other in many, many states. And again, cannabis is being recognized as a powerful plant medicine, but there's still lots of work to do. So where does the energy get focused now?
For me, infrastructure. So we've been asking, of course, farmers to grow a crop for which there's very little infrastructure other than an absolute up to our hemp and eyeballs saturated infrastructure in botanical extraction. When we talk, though, about the trillion-dollar industries here, we're talking about oil, seed, and fiber. And so I think the framework as we go to answer that question is just to sort of discuss or give the laundry list of industries that this plant serves. And we'll keep it to hemp for this conversation because it's just other conversations for other, which we can have, but I'll answer it from a hemp perspective. So when we're talking about hemp, we are talking about human and animal nutrition, body care, nutraceuticals, and pharmaceuticals. We're talking also about paper, textiles, building materials, biocomposites and bioresins, energy, fuel, charcoal, pellets, nanotechnology, biomedical applications. Somebody stop me. The plant is here to serve all of humanity's needs and the needs of the winged creatures and the four-leggeds and the swimmers as well. And so we've got to get the infrastructure in to be able to plant and harvest and process the longest, strongest stock in the world. Because while we love the fact that it's the longest, strongest stock in the world after it's harvested and processed, it takes some interesting and new equipment to be able to harvest these very tall crops, as well as to process those long and strong crops. And of course, we've got the most nutrient-dense seed of really the entire seed and nut kingdom when we talk about the hemp seed and it being the most digestible or highest digestible form of protein for several reasons, which we can get into, but I want to make sure we focus on the questions at hand versus or in combination with the processing of the flowering tops and leaves. which is where we would get these very promising non-intoxicating cannabinoids, the most popular one, and the one with so much research right now, of course, being cannabidiol or CBD. We're certainly seeing other genetics coming up in the hemp world that have more of an expression of other non-intoxicating cannabinoids as well, such as CBG, cannabigerol, or CBN, cannabinol, and so many others. We're up to 140 cannabinoids. But that infrastructure for processing, for extracting botanicals is exhausted here in the United States. We do not need another single extraction facility up. And in 2019, in fact, there was enough hemp extract varieties planted in the state of Kentucky to produce enough hemp oil so that every citizen in the United States could have about 20 milligrams a day for a full year. So we really do not want farmers to continue to chase this, as I think you've heard me say, glitter farting unicorn dream of I'm going to make several $1,000s, and we've heard everything from $10,000 to $250,000 to $1 million an acre. And it's not that the $10,000 an acre hasn't been realized for folks who are experienced, who have gone through the steep learning curve, and who have the stable genetics. But what we really want is to provide our farmers with economic stability through the trillion-dollar industries, which are oilseed and fiber. Now, we need them to have infrastructure and a contract in order to make them secure in being able to plant those crops. And ideally, especially with this heavy crop, as you know, Eric, where it's not economically viable to be carting it around great distances, right. Yep. Ultimately, we will see these processing and manufacturing facilities within 50 to 100 square miles of every hemp biomass feedstock. And we just don't have that yet. It is up and coming. So what we are now asking entrepreneurs to do, and this has been the chicken and the egg, please, hemp farmer, please grow hemp, even though there's hardly any infrastructure. Please, entrepreneur, please invest in infrastructure, even though there's hardly any oilseed and fiber hemp being grown. Yet we are seeing one foot in front of the other, this infrastructure coming up. And really, that's where such great opportunity is for these first movers in creating this infrastructure. And finally, before you go on to your next question, and I know I've given you quite an answer here, and thank you for your patience with that, is we also want hemp to be the crop where the buck stops here and the farmer is paid fairly for his and her crops and all of those risks, and that it is not the processor, manufacturer, and retailer that gets all the lion's share here. We are here, hemp is here to create fairness throughout the entire supply chain, starting with honoring the farmers who are the heroes here.
Amen to that. Yeah, that anticipates my next question. So like you never see an industry sort of get born, right? It's like we've inherited all of these other sort of industries in progress, but with the case of hemp, it's a brand new industry, and we get to design it from the ground up. And so in doing that, how can farmers avoid getting the short end of the stick? Like, how do we design these systems that take care of the most important players here, and that's the farmer?
It's so true. And of course, I have to say that it is reborn, right? We're talking about the reemergence of the crop and the reemergence of the industries here, which were so strong in the United States before this huge leap into better living through chemistry, which had to happen as part of our evolution. So there are a few things. One is education for the farmer to understand. Farmers are so sophisticated, man, and also some of the most innocent people of all the industries who are used to doing things on a handshake. And in all forms of cannabis, including hemp, I would say no more doing things on a handshake. Also understanding that contracts, no matter how tightly written they are only as good as the people who are signing those contracts, right? So due diligence in terms of, and checking references and checking backgrounds, and having an attorney look at those contracts. I would say also that Cornell University Ag Extension actually has some fantastic useful information out there for farmers and contracts, really having the first line of defense for the contract, for the farmer, Cornell has. So things to really be on the lookout for, particularly because Cornell has seen just insanity. We all have, but Cornell has just taken such a great, wonderful leadership role in these re-emerging industries and has done some fantastic work on fairness with contracts, particularly as it relates to extraction, botanical extraction, which of course is where we've seen so much of the exploitation. So education, solid contracts, maybe sitting this one out this year for hemp extract. Variety trials is what I strongly encourage for oil seed and fiber varieties. What is going to grow well in your soil, in your climate, farmer? Well, I fully understand that. As I say that, I understand that we're talking about costs for testing. We're talking about costs for these different genetics, while of course understanding that variety trials do not need to be huge. In fact, we saw them in the early 2014, 15, and 16 in our institutions of higher education, where these variety trials sometimes were as big as 2 8-foot-long tables put together. You know, it'd be variety flax, variety corn. But those are wonderful ways for the farmer to start dipping the toe in the water, finding what those genetics are, learning the hard lessons that need to be learned, learn them on a small scale so they're prepared and primed and ready to go when that oil seed and fiber processing infrastructure comes to a region near them. And I think that it's going to be quite regional when we talk about all of those different industries that we serve. I think we're going to find that it's regional goods and products that start to pop up. Maybe here it's going to be a bunch of extract in Colorado, Kentucky. Maybe here in another jurisdiction, Montana, Minnesota, North Dakota, we're going to see grain and also pharma, but particularly what will we get into? Where is it going to be the nanotechnology aspect of things where we get into further processing? It's a very exciting time, and again, wonderful opportunities for everybody. But we're going to have to be vigilant in terms of making sure that that farmer does not get the short end of the stick as advocates. And in watching everything that's happening with legislation and regulation, understanding that the marathon is just beginning. And every year is another opportunity to get the law right and improve it and to be a first line of defense to make sure it's not going the other way. And the same thing with regulations again. And we're going to have to be defending the farmer the entire time.
All right, so go with me into the future. Let's go maybe 5-10 years into the future, and that infrastructure is in place. What does the whole larger community of manufacturers look like? What would a region, a regional economy look like with hemp as the base ingredient?
Vibrant, particularly due to all of the co-products. And we don't use the word byproduct in hemp because there's just no such thing when we talk about how every single part of the plant can be used, although let's get realistic about that in terms of, we can't really, when we talk about dual crops and tri-crops. So for example, let's use Holland as a case study since they're living and breathing this reality already. So here, when we are growing hemp for these extract varieties, they look like individually cared for plants, like one plant for every 1.5 square meters versus a fiber crop, which can be 200 to 300 or 300 to 400 plants per square meter, and then grain about 100 to 200. So in Holland, where they're growing for fiber, and just Dun Agro is the first company that comes to mind. They've got these beautiful, and they're intense, which is why agricultural cooperatives, which is something we haven't discussed yet, are really going to come into play here to keep farmers of all sizes able to stay in the game. I really believe in agricultural cooperatives, but particularly when we talk about financing and cost of inputs and genetics, but certainly equipment. And these double cut combines that they have in Holland, they cut about 8 foot above the stem for the stalk, And then they strip the flowering tops and leaves off the upper part of the plant and then put those into another part of the combine. So what they're doing there is harvesting for the fiber, in which case they're making they're separating the hurd and the bast. So that's decortication, which is essentially the primary piece of processing for that stalk, where we're separating that outer bark or bast fiber from that inner woody core, often called shids or shives, particularly in Europe. And so they're taking that hurd and processing it into a aggregate for construction infill, for hempcrete and other items, as well as for animal bedding. So that does take extra processing. You're first decorticating it, you're separating the bast from the hurd, then you're taking the hurd, which looks like sort of wood chips, although it's not wood, and that's what's so amazing about hemp, is that on a microscopic level, we see how unique the cellulosic makeup of hemp is as compared to wood or canaf or jute. But it needs to be further processed, particularly to be as an aggregate for hempcrete, so that it is in a particular geometric particle range. And this is not difficult, but yes, it adds money to the capital expenditure for the infrastructure and removes that chaff or dust that's created during the process. And that can also be used for animal bedding. And then they take the outer bast fiber and use that to create a non-woven mat, which can be used for another form of insulation. Looks just like the nasty, toxic, rolled up pink stuff, except that it's not nasty and toxic. It's hemp fiber, hemp outer bast fiber, and can also be used for grow mats. And then they're extracting those those flowering tops and leaves. Although keep in mind that here in the United States, where we have so much more land than they do in Europe, so they're very mindful of how they use that agricultural land in Europe. We are processing and growing hemp plants that have anywhere between 11 to 17 or 18, and people brag about higher percent of CBD. Whereas when I'm talking about the model that I'm discussing here, it has only about 3 to 4% CBD in it, but they're using 2 parts of the plant for getting the larger bang for their buck. So they've got the infrastructure, they're processing the stock, they're also processing the leaves for extraction. And that's the type of model that we'd like to see, where we're using at least 2 parts of the plant for all the crops that are grown. Now, is that always possible in every climate, in every soil, for every purpose? No, it is not, but we certainly want to move forward in that respect. And so a vibrant community where we're looking at these various these various co-products that serve multiple markets and multiple R&D, so that even if we talk about getting pyrolysis involved here, where we can be taking our hemp biomass and making, fuels and plastics and resins, but also carbon nanotubes that can start to feed the air and space industries, as well as nanotechnology. I mean, we're about to run out. Silicon is going to run out of space for as fast as technology is developing, and carbon is the only thing that's going to be able to take its place. And right on time, here we have hemp with surface area and strength second only to graphite whiskers and carbon nanotubes, which are very cost prohibitive just from an R&D perspective to create these man-made materials. And we can do these things with pyrolysis. So vibrant communities serving multiple industries.
That's amazing. Can you go back to, you're talking about cooperatives. Can you talk about sort of the vision you have for farmer co-ops, and specifically about sharing equipment?
Yes, absolutely. And this again is where due diligence is just very important. And so agricultural cooperatives are nothing new, right? We've had the Kentucky Tobacco, even the Kentucky Hemp Cooperative existed way back in the day, and is being reborn. But our National Agricultural Law Center, discusses the fact that individual farmers really can't consistently and reliably control the price they receive for agricultural products. They also can't control the price that they pay for inputs needed to produce those goods. So farmers do often form cooperatives so that they can enhance their economic market power. And these cooperatives serve many needs, such as, and most importantly, as we talked about, education, right? We want farmers to have successful, positive, revenue-generating experiences when they grow this crop. So sharing information and education, that's such an important role in cooperatives. But purchasing genetics, crop insurance and other types of insurance too, health and property and casualty insurance. I mean, the larger pool that you're drawing from, obviously the bigger your economic buying power is. So obviously in marketing those crops, right, and selling those crops to be able to get the contracts, and then for all the members of the cooperative to be able to satisfy the needs of that contract clearly and obviously within the specs. Lab testing, we have so much lab testing, additional lab testing that comes along with the hemp crop. Drying and storing houses, this is all very important. Purchasing equipment, thank you, is just so totally key. Hemp processing equipment, hemp harvesting equipment, depending and particularly on, and if you're in grain farming, as you know, we're going to have to keep the moisture controlled, the temperature controlled, all of that with the grain as that's being stored. Financing, banking, lending, all of these things, retirement benefits, legal representation. These are all things that in a cooperative, there is so much higher strength in numbers.
You mentioned testing. Do you foresee a time when we won't be required to do so much testing for THC?
I sure do. So, and it's such the rub and such a frustrating rub here, where what we're really dealing with on so many levels is decades of a very effective social engineering campaign with real true hysteria around delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol or D9 THC. And it's true that we've gotten to call that THC, but as we get very sophisticated here, understand that there are 30 isomers of THC, everything from a delta-6 acidic form all the way up to delta-10. And I don't mean to get in the weeds here, brother, in our show here, but I just want to sort of lay the groundwork for folks to know that these days, when you say THC, we want to make sure what THC are we talking about? Because we've got this whole situation with delta-8, which is a podcast in itself. But in any event, ideally, what I believe we will see as we move out away from the hysterical prohibition into data and science-driven information is we'll start to potentially not even test the crop at all in the fields for THC. It will boil down to what was the intended use of the crop. Was it made for animal or human consumption? Because if it wasn't, do we even care? Do we care at all about an intoxication potential when I'm trying to make textiles or building materials or chips for computers, for heaven's sake? Who cares? Now, having said that, we're not going from 0 to 60. That isn't the way the law works. It isn't the way society works or human evolution, but we are working very hard. And in fact, the European Industrial Hemp Association just announced that they are embarking on a 200, and they do so much of the heavy lifting, having, regulated and been so much more sophisticated with the crop than we have been here in North America. Although, side note, as you know, Eric, Canada has been regulating the crop with federal crop insurance since 1998 and very quickly made themselves the leader in hemp grain food processing, bulk ingredient manufacturing, etc. So ultimately, and what we've got, by the way, in Canada, at least right now, they've got an exemption where if a particular variety, and in Canada, they have a list of approved varieties, which we don't have here yet in the United States. Certain states do. They also have prohibited varieties. But in Canada, they have a list of approved cultivars that you can grow there. And for the varieties that are on that list, if they test below or at 0.2%, keep in mind 0.3% of D9 THC is the legal limit in Canada. But if a variety tests at or below 0.2% for 3 years, they're now exempt from field testing. If you're planting that variety, nobody needs to field test your crop. It's exempt from testing because it is just ridiculous to do it, and we can control it from that level. So I think that I know that as the hysteria transforms into data and science-driven information, and we begin to extract ourselves, as we are doing now, from this very effective social engineering campaign, we are going to see that lessening up quite a bit.
Okay. And that's the reefer madness kind of thing.
That is the reefer madness kind of thing. I will just quickly say, of course, and for folks coming from a farming perspective who are sophisticated, Eric, I'm not telling them or you anything you don't already know. But folks who are coming at this from a hemp or cannabis from a hemp or cannabis perspective that don't understand how agriculture or farming works, don't understand that, listen, if you're going to manufacture or hold hemp seeds for human consumption or for animal consumption, particularly in this country, understand the battery of tests that it's going to go through, much the same way a sunflower seed, before it gets put in a bag and sent out to a store for a person to consume, gets put through. In fact, it's a huge battery of tests, microtoxins and pesticides and all of these things. The only difference between preparing a hemp seed ready for to be put on the market for consumption and a sunflower seed is that right now, yes, there would still be a test for Delta-9 THC.
So am I missing something about THC? Like, is it so scary, like they have to regulate it, or is it they want to regulate it because they know they can make money from it because it's intoxicating? Like, I just don't, I feel like I'm missing some key information as to why it's such a big deal.
Yes, and there are multiple factors, and you hit two of the major ones right there on the head. And unfortunately, it's not like they're mutually, they exist together, they coexist. So one is, yes, Delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol has a potential for intoxication. And since we all have, with alcohol, by the way, it's pretty reliable stuff. We don't have an endo alcohol system in our bodies. So if I drink, a couple of shots of vodka and you drink a couple of shots of vodka, unless we're both chronic alcoholics, which I'm assuming we're not, it's going to affect us pretty much the same way. Having said that, we do have endocannabinoid systems, which were discovered in our lifetimes, and they're different for everybody. They're like thumbprints, or as I like to say, snowflakes, although, gosh, in the wake of the election, I'm trying not to use the word snowflake, but they're that unique. There is no snowflake that is the same, and there is no endocannabinoid that is the same. So if I consume let's say adult use or medical cannabis that has, a high percentage, or even let's just say 12% Delta-9 THC, which is not a whole lot these days. It may affect me differently than it is going to affect you, and it probably will, particularly given that I've been consuming Delta-9 THC daily since I was 18 years old. So it will affect people differently, but there is potential for intoxication. So yes, that's true. Secondly, the big pharma interest, and I'm not a big conspiracy theory girl, but when you gotta call it like it is, the reality is that is tremendous amount of buying power and lobbying power and money and power of just the most threatening kind when you're sitting here trying to liberate a plant for the smallest farmer and the smallest entrepreneur and business person and cottage industry and consumer. So it's true that between special interests and the fact that this is an intoxicating compound that we need to figure out how to liberate into the world responsibly, and that will be an evolving process. That's kind of the deal we've got here with THC.
Okay.
If I could add one more piece to that, and thank you, Eric, for letting me add to it. And you'll decide if this is going to be too racy for the show or not, but keep in mind that effective social engineering that I'm talking about, this wasn't just social engineering about, gee, THC is going to make you high and jump out windows, reefer madness. It went very much deeper into racism, into our root chakra, our sexuality. The Negro jazz singer, when he consumes marijuana, is going to make him think that he's good enough to have sexual relations with your white wife. And when your white wife consumes marijuana, she's going to want to have sexual relations with the Negro jazz singer. So understand that it got really deep. And so we are having to extract ourselves from real, true psychological, sick practices and nefarious strategies that were used to create the attitudes towards THC that we're dealing with today.
Yeah, and that's very unfortunate. But I mean, there's more to THC than an intoxication. It's like I think about the Beatles, right? And there's that story about the time when the Beatles were in New York City in 1964, and a young Bob Dylan rolls in and gets them all high for the first time. And you just see in the rest of the catalog of the Beatles' music that something changed. Was it exposure to THC? Did it give them like more or different musical information? I don't know. I'm just curious. I'm curious about the other effects of THC rather than just plain intoxication.
I am so thankful that you have asked this question, because it's also so much of what inspired me and what inspires me every day to do the work that I do. And that is, THC wants to be in the human body. We have a relationship with this plant, clearly endocannabinoid system, but THC in particular, the most wily genetic trait in this plant is the delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol. The cannabinoids themselves are the craziest parts of the plant to breed, to maintain, to manage. But that delta-9 THC is the wiliest. Why? It wants to be in the human body. It wants to be part of our thinking and our evolution for exactly the reasons that you just mentioned. It is creativity. It is spirituality. It is self-awareness and healing. And in fact, I'd love to connect you with him, Eric, for my own podcast, finally interviewed a dear friend of mine, Dan Harrer, Jack Harrer's son. Jack Harrer, who wrote The Emperor Wears No Clothes. And I will have you know that part of Jack's story, he was a square military man, let me tell you. And he and his wife divorced, and he got wind of the fact, this is all pre-Emperor Wears No Clothes, that his wife, and this is only public because Dan tells this story, but that his wife consumed marijuana in front of his children. Jack Harrer finds this out and wants to report his wife to the authorities. He cannot believe that his wife is breaking the law, engaging in marijuana consumption in the presence of his children. He is beside himself. And so he discusses this with a woman who he's aware of, who he's friends with. And that night, she actually has him consume marijuana for the first time in his life. And it transforms Jack Harrer and all of this self-awareness and all of these realizations that come to him, just like it did for me. And I don't know if you consume cannabis, but if you do, or if you have, just like it did for you and just like it does for so many people. So thank you for addressing the fact that it's a Schedule I substance, stating that it has no medical value, along with other Schedule I substances for another time, another show, that all lead to the evolution and increasing of human consciousness. And that is and has been the major fear, because we cannot control the masses when they are enlightened. And yes, this plant is a path to enlightenment, straight up.
Yes, through my research, I find that this plant is transformative.
Yes.
So I think we covered this, but I do have the question that I like to ask. Does that marijuana stigma matter anymore? And we sort of touched on that, but maybe we can take it from a different angle.
Yeah, and I mean, and you'll get different answers from different people. Because the first thing that comes to my mind, I guess it depends on who you're talking to. It mattered 30 years ago in the same way that it matters today to certain people. Me, Joy Beckerman, didn't care 30 years ago, don't care today. I was advocating for this plant, not only before it was cool, but when it subjected a person to public shame, to law enforcement scrutiny, to being shunned from various organizations, whether it would be for your school's children's organization or local civic groups. I've always been in that position, and it has never mattered to me. So when we ask, does it matter? Again, I guess it matters who you're talking to, because to me, the answer is absolutely not. Having said that, if I were in the military, if I didn't have options for my career, which I've luckily been able to in law firms, let me tell you, I moved to Seattle in 1998 with dreadlocks past my butt. And got hired at a very high-end firm because I had great grades, great scores on all of that testing. But there's no law firm out there that's going to start asking their talent if they consume marijuana, even though when it's quite obvious in their face, pretty much, given the dreadlocks down past her butt, because they're performing. So did it matter to the high-end law firms? No. If I were going through a contentious divorce and there were parental custody rights involved, would it matter to me then under those circumstances? Yes, if it were contentious, I'd have an issue there. So there are all of those circumstances, brother, and it's regional as well, right? Idaho is a big deal, man, is a big deal. And yet I have activist friends who live in Idaho and subject themselves to public shame and law enforcement scrutiny every day. And so it depends on who you're asking.
Fair enough. Yep. All right. So from my work here in this podcast, talking to lots of different people, it really seems like the mass production of hemp could have, like a mitigating effect on carbon in the atmosphere and slowing of climate change. But it seems like we're not going to get to like a plant-based manufacturing unless there's like consumer demand, right? So how do you get the world to sort of transition from the oil-based manufacturing to plant-based manufacturing? Like, how do we get the masses on board?
Amen. And there's so many revolutions taking place at once right now, which is what's really going to save us, right? There's a public health revolution. There's a consciousness revolution. There's a climate crisis revolution. There is an industrial revolution in that folks want higher performing, more natural items. So consumers are demanding these things. And there's an educational revolution with all of these things happening at once. And when we've got sort of the most polluting industries, which will go with the energy industry, the gas and fuel industry, as well as the construction industry, where over 50% of our landfills every year are filled with construction waste from toxic, off-gassing, often temporary now, supplies and materials. But all of that, when we talk about wood, we're talking finite. Certainly when we're talking about fossil fuels, we are talking about finite resources. So these industries are being forced due to finite resources to come up with alternative industries and alternative materials and supplies. And they are doing that, thank goodness. Also, just a quickie here, when we talk about carbon sequestration and hempcrete and hemp building materials, but particularly hempcrete, which of the thousands of hemp products is my favorite, remains my favorite, and it's where my true passion lies. understand that, particularly because of the lime. Hempcrete is a construction infill. It's not a substitute for concrete. We don't touch it to the ground. It won't remain mold, rot resistant. This construction infill hempcrete is mold, rot, fire, and pest resistant, but it's not going to stay mold or rot resistant if it touches the ground. So this is a living, breathing construction insulation. But it's basically 4-1-1, 4 parts hemp hurd, 1 part lime, a special kind of lime, 1 part water, and it will literally fossilize and grab, thanks to lime, which wants to convert itself back into calcium carbonate once we've turned it into a mortar, and it starts to grab carbon molecules from the air to become stone again, and in fact it does become monolithic over time. So we're talking about growing a plant that's going to sequester carbon while it's growing and then create goods and homes and structures that further sequester carbon. It's an exponential effect on all of that. Now, but consumer education, and it's part of why, even though hemp extract and CBD, which takes up all the air in the room and tends to take over conversations, even when, I'll be at a conference or I was like, we're not going to talk about CBD not one time. And believe me, I love CBD. But there's so much else to talk about. Having said that, one of the tremendous blessings of CBD is that there are lots of people out there, Eric, who are very receptive to the message of, oh my goodness, hemp paper can be recycled 100 more times than tree paper, and we don't have to bleach it and poison the water table with dioxins, and because it doesn't have so much lignin, we don't even have to use so many harsh chemicals to break down and create pulp, hemp pulp versus wood pulp. They're moved by that. But when they haven't been able to sleep for 6 weeks, or they've had a shoulder problem that acts up every time they exercise for the last 12 years, and they take a hemp extract and they have a good night's sleep, or they experience comfort and relief from that discomfort, that is a game changer. And so now they're really listening. So hemp extract and these promising cannabinoids have been a wonderful way for us to use these platforms to educate the consumer. So, and we need real established market leaders to get in on the education game and get in on educating. And it is happening. Hey, Colgate just came out with hemp seed oil toothpaste. So one foot in front of the other. But the needs of industry and the needs of the planet are really forcing the exploration into hemp.
Joy, it is great to talk to you. Thank you so much. Are there places on the internet that you would want to direct people to go to learn more about your work?
Well, thank you so much for that. I can certainly be found on my website at hempace.com. When it comes to advocacy, which again is really my heart song here, and we live in a country where everyone gets to engage in the process. And in fact, it was set up for everyone to engage in the process, understanding that when the people lead, the leaders follow. So for folks to go to hempsupporter.com, that's hempsupporter.com, and sign up for the newsletter there. I promise you do not get bombarded with emails, but when it is time for your voice to be heard and a call to action needs to be followed, we want you to be able to get those emails and take the 2 minutes to follow up on that call to action. So hempace.com to find me, and hempsupporter.com to engage in the process.
All right, great. I will put those links on the show page for this episode.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you for doing this and for singing the song of hemp, brother. I'll be excited to speak with you again.
Absolutely. It's really nice to meet you. Thank you, Joy.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that does it for the show today. Holy cow, that was like a show and a half. Thank you so much to Joy Beckerman and Morris Beagle and Ken Elliott. And congratulations to FO_Hemp_ for winning those headphones. And again, check your email. So that does it for me today. My name is Eric Herlock. I am the digital editor at Lancaster Farming Newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. Check us out online at lancasterfarming.com. And be sure to follow us on the Instagram. We are at LF Podcast Hemp. And you can always email me at podcast@lancasterfarming.com. I'm always looking for great people to talk to in the hemp space, news items, whatever. If you have questions, hit me up. Like I said earlier in the show, we are a community, and I'm here for you if you need something. So, okay, until next time, I will see you in the newspaper.
Industrial hemp.
Episode 120 of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast is copyright 2021 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, which is part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show was written and recorded, edited and produced by yours truly, Eric Herlock, and the music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tin Bird Shadow.